Hello, students. I hope you all are doing good. Today, our topic is the Union Executive, the Prime Minister, the Union Cabinet, and the Council of Ministers. Prime Minister of India, our constitutional maker, rejected the presidential form of government and adopted the parliamentary form of government. It is written in our constitution that there shall be a council of ministers with the prime minister at the head of to aid and advise the president. Here, the word shall indicates that the president cannot function without the council of ministers. President is the nominal or the constitutional head of the country, but the active head is the prime minister. Students, please remember the prime minister is never elected, he is always appointed. The prime minister is appointed by the president, and other ministers are appointed by the president on the aid and advice of the prime minister. In this, only a formal power of the president. The prime minister is the leader of the majority party or the leader of the alliances. In appointing the prime minister, president has very little power of making a personal choice. Now, power and functions of the prime minister. Prime minister is a bridge between cabinet and the council of ministers. The major decisions for our country are taken by the cabinet, conveyed to the president through prime minister. 3 sessions of parliament take place in a year. President summons them, president ends them, president can dissolve the Lok Sabha. That all is done by the president on the advice of the prime minister. The president cannot remove the prime minister as long as he enjoys the confidence of members of Lok Sabha. Prime Minister and the Cabinet. Prime Minister is the keystone of the Cabinet arch. The Prime Minister is the recognized leader of the Cabinet. President appoints the ministers, allocate portfolios to them on the advice of the Prime Minister. There is no provision in our constitution regarding the appointment of different categories of ministers, such as ministers of the cabinet rank, state rank, and the deputy. The constitution leaves the prime minister at liberty in these matters. But you always remember the size of the council of ministers cannot exceed more than 15% of the total strength of Lok Sabha. The Prime Minister resignation means the resignation of the whole Council of Ministers. No minister can remain minister when the Prime Minister resigns. Prime Minister is the ex officio chairman of the Council of Ministers, means all the meetings of the cabinet are presided by the Prime Minister. He fixes the agenda for the meetings. And during the meeting, all the ministers put forward their views, but the ultimate decision is the decision of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister directs and coordinates policies between the various departments of the government. And Prime Minister is the link between Cabinet and the Council of Ministers. Prime Minister inside the Parliament. Prime Minister, on the advice of the Prime Minister, President summons and prorogues the sessions of the Parliament and can dissolve the Lok Sabha. Prime Minister is the principal spokesperson of the country and defender of the government in the Parliament. All important policies of the government declared by the President on the floor of the Lok Sabha. Sometimes some ministers come under severe attack. Under these circumstances, the Prime Minister saves that minister from ugly situation inside the house. Generally, the Prime Minister of India represents the country in all international conferences like NAM, SAARC, BRICS, and the Commonwealth countries. And in those meetings, the leaders discuss the trade issues, the world economy, state sponsored terrorism, world peace, and environment. Prime Minister as leader of the nation. Student, remember the Prime Minister is the recognized leader of the nation. The nation always looks towards the Prime Minister for his views on every subject. Recently, the Prime Minister of India visited Ladakh. The whole nation was looking towards him about his opinion on Indo-China relations. At the time of the general election, the voters vote for the prime ministerial candidate. They don't vote for the party, they vote for the candidate. Position of the prime minister. So, prime minister exercised vast authority in legislation and finance. He inspires the people with the personal qualities. But we must remember the limitations on the Prime Minister of India. Students, please remember, these are the limitations on the Prime Minister. The first limitation of the Prime Minister is his own party men. Second is the opposition. Third is the alliances. And fourth is the press or the media. Formation and organization of the Council of Ministers. Designation new Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is appointed by the President. On his advice, the other ministers are appointed by the President. Can a non-MP be a minister? Can a non-MP become a Prime Minister? Yes, they can. But that person has to get himself elected or nominated for either of the houses within a period of 6 months. I quote example of Uddhav Thackeray, the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. He was not member of either of the house of the Maharashtra, that is Vidhan Sabha and Vidhan Parishad. But he got himself nominated for Vidhan Parishad within the period of 6 months to retain his position as the Chief Minister of that particular state. After becoming the minister, all the ministers take oath that is administered by the President of India. The size of the Council of Ministers cannot be more than 15% of the total strength of Lok Sabha. There is no provision in our constitution for the Deputy Prime Minister, but we had Deputy Prime Minister in the past. The first was Sardar Patel and the last was L.K. Advani. Various categories of ministers. There are 3 categories of ministers. The first is the cabinet ministers. The highest category of minister is known as the cabinet minister. They hold major portfolios like home, defense, finance, external affairs, railway, etc. And they determine the major policies of the country. Second is the ministers of state. They are not ministers, members of the cabinet. They may or may not be given an independent charge of a ministry. They do not part in the meetings of the cabinet unless a topic regarding their department is going to be discussed or they are invited to do so. The junior most category of ministers are known as the deputy minister, and their job is to assist their senior ministers. Tenure. The tenure of office of the Prime Minister and the ministers. The Constitution says the ministers shall hold office during the pleasure of the President. But in reality, the Council of Ministers remain in power till they enjoy the confidence of members of Lok Sabha. So the President cannot dismiss the Prime Minister as long as he enjoys the support of the majority in the Lok Sabha. Now, what is the distinction between Cabinet and the Council of Ministers? Cabinet and the Council of Ministers. These are not, they are most of the time used as interchangeable terms, but they are not. There are differences between them. First difference between Cabinet and the Council of Ministers is Cabinet is consisted only of the ministers of Cabinet rank, whereas Council of Ministers is consisted of all categories of ministers. Number 1. It is written in our constitution there shall be a Council of Ministers for the aid and advice of the President, but in reality the President takes the advice of the Cabinet. In day-to-day working, the Cabinet Minister meets more frequently and Council of Ministers meets rarely. The Constitution says there shall be there shall be a council minister for the consultation of the Prime Minister. Now we will do, lastly, we will do the collective responsibility and the individual responsibility. Under Article 75, Section 3 of the Constitution, the Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to the House of the People. The ministers are responsible to the Lok Sabha not as individual alone but collectively. Members of the cabinet swim and sink together. Once a decision is taken, the whole cabinet has to stand by it without any hesitation. If no confidence motion is passed against the Prime Minister has to resign, and the resignation of the Prime Minister means the resignation of the whole Council of Ministers. Individual responsibility. Though the ministers are collectively responsible to Lok Sabha, but individually they are answerable to the President. They hold office during the pleasure of the President. It implies the minister shall be liable to be dismissed by the President for their undesirable activities such as breach of oaths of office and secrecy. Every minister is obliged to answer questions pertaining to his department. So this is individual responsibility and collective responsibility. So students, we have done who can be the Prime Minister of India, what are the powers and functions of the Prime Minister, and what is the difference between Cabinet and the Council of Ministers, 3 categories of the minister, and individual responsibility and the collective responsibility. I hope I made you understood the topic. Regarding queries, if you will have any, we will do them in the next session of ours. Till then, thank you and stay safe.